Anyway, but we are going to jump into this. What I want to talk about, what I want to focus on with Biden, as we're going to get into the polling, we're going to get into some of the numbers and a general conversation about electability in the race. But before we talk about the boring, the number stuff, the 538 stuff, I think the campaign ad is really critical that we have to talk about because, you know, when we talk about politics, we talk about political rhetoric, what we're really talking about is framing. Right? How did Donald Trump frame the 2016 election? Whereas people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and even Rand Paul were having difficulty framing the race as a struggle for liberty or conservatism or, you know, some other vapid ideology. Trump's framing was, I'm not really a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm an outsider. The country has gone downhill in the past 25 years, and I'm going to make it great again. His framing was not really a right or a left-wing thing, at least in the context of where we were at the time. You know, it wasn't like Fox News versus MSNBC. It was not very partisan. It was a framing based on the past 30 years as opposed to the past 8 years. You know, a lot of candidates were fixating on Barack Obama. So the framing was about, well, the last 8 years were pretty rough. Trump said, no, you know, it wasn't just the last 8 years. And it wasn't just Obama. It was Obama. It was Bush. It was Clinton. It was Bush. Maybe it was also a little bit Reagan. So the framing was very strong with Donald Trump and very different. The framing for Joe Biden here is also very interesting. If you watch his campaign ad, the entire video is about Charlottesville. And I'm not going to show you the video, but I will read a few quotes from this from CNN. This is the article that they posted about his announcement. It says, quote, in his campaign announcement video, Biden rebuked the white supremacist rally. Yeah, I don't know if it was that. In Charlottesville, Virginia, in August 2017, and President Donald Trump's handling of the aftermath. And there's a quote from the video. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. With those words, the President of the United States assigned a moral equivalence between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it. And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime. The core values of this nation are standing in the world. They're very democracy. Everything that has made America is at stake. That's why today I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. So a lot of that is boilerplate. You know, the core values are at stake. It's a battle for the soul of the nation. A lot of that's kind of boilerplate type stuff, and that's why I decided to run for president. That's not really the substance here. The substance is, why Charlottesville? Why Charlottesville? Why talking about America as an idea? And then it really dawned on me, this is actually perfect. This is something we've been talking about for a really, really long time on the show, which is the concept of Republicans as maybe the incompetent and unknowing guardians of traditional America. They're the vanguards of a traditionalist conception of America. And the Democrats are the vanguard, the revolutionary vanguard of a revolutionary conception of America. So I've got a whiteboard here sort of illustrating this concept. I think we've done something similar to this before, but it's worth repeating. This is basically where we're at in terms of partisanship in America. You know, if you think it's about healthcare, if you think it's about economic policies, things like that, this is what the real partisan divide is in the country. So I'm going to go over this. Let me just decrease our brightness so you can see the lettering a little bit better there. Where's my pointer? I don't like this pointer as much. Normally I use that the big Mickey Mouse one, but everybody complains. Everybody's got to complain about that one, so I guess we're doing the one with the black tip here so you can see it a little better. So on this side, you've got Donald Trump. He's the vanguard of traditional America. On this side, you have Joe Biden, the vanguard of revolutionary America. What's not on this chart is what was said in the video. Joe Biden said, America is an idea. And all throughout the video, you've got all these little vignettes of Martin Luther King Jr. and the suffragettes and civil rights activists. And it really got me to thinking this is actually totally perfect. This is where we're at as a country. So I guess we'll start on this side. The new Democratic Party, or actually, I think we should start on the Republican side. The Republican side, knowing or unknowing, are the vanguards of America as we knew it from the first settlers coming to the North American continent in the early 17th century, all the way up until maybe 2008 when Barack Obama is elected. This is what we think of when normal people think of America. We think about the founding fathers. Who are the famous heroes of American history? It's George Washington. It's Thomas Jefferson. It's Benjamin Franklin. It's Abraham Lincoln. Not a founding father, but you get the picture. These are the kinds of people we think about when we think about our heroes. Christopher Columbus, among others. Normative, normal, traditional American heroes. We think of traditional America, we think it's European. Of course, it's not on the European continent, but we think of America as a white country with white culture, white values. It actually started out not only as European, but Anglo. It started out as a British colony, and then, of course, this expanded to other Northern Europeans. And then eventually in the 20th century, you incorporated, and we can never forget this, Irish, Italians, Eastern Europeans, to some extent Ashkenazi Jews. But basically, America is, in its aesthetic, in its culture, in its values, in its texture, a European country. Traditional America is a Christian country. This is a country of Christian values, Christian morals, Protestant, and then eventually had some Catholic outposts, but fundamentally Christian. And when we talk about the First Amendment, only until very recently did this mean Muslims, Jews, other categories. For much of America's history, it's almost exclusively a Christian country. Traditional America is a family society. Men, women, children, husbands, wives, a normal society, not all this other crazy stuff. It's a country that speaks English. It's a country that values work. It's obviously an Anglo-Protestant country. I'm Mediterranean, so we don't really understand this. But hard work, this is probably the premier value in America. It's a country of settlers and explorers. It's a settler society, which is very important. You look at what distinguishes it from Europe. In Europe, these are established countries. You look at a country like France, Italy, and so on. These have not been settler countries for probably millions of years. You know, when you had other civilizations and empires rise and fall in Europe, you had people there for a long time, or you had some degree of advanced civilization there for a long time. America is different. We know that America is a relatively young country. America is a country that was settled as opposed to conquered, as opposed to other things, migrated. It's a settler society. It was, of course, discovered only very recently by daring explorers, settled by pioneers, built up by entrepreneurs, titans of industry, and so on. And lastly, America is a hierarchical society. So whether we know it or not, and I'll have some more comments on this in a moment, this is basically what the right wing in America represents. And people can say it's about limited government, or it's about low taxes, or war in the Middle East. This is really what the right wing in America looks like. This is traditionalist America. Maybe we're losing a lot because we're not really defending this stuff. On this side is where you have the left. This is what Joe Biden is all about. As opposed to the founding fathers, you've got civil rights. The civil rights activists are the founding fathers of this new country they're trying to create within America. Whereas people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and George Mason, people who fought in the Revolutionary War, wrote the Declaration, framed the Constitution, were the founding fathers of this country that I was born in, my parents were born in, and so on. The founders of this country were the suffragettes and the abolitionists and Martin Luther King Jr. This new country was probably born sometime in the 1960s, or perhaps has yet to be born. These are the people that gained independence for revolutionary America and fought in the struggles for this new country with new values, with a new texture, and so on. This new country is anti-European. I wouldn't even say it's not European so much as it is anti-European. You can't really say what it is. Is it black? Well, not entirely. Are we going back to Native Americans? Well, not entirely. Is it Asian? Is it Hispanic? It's some kind of amalgamation of it all. It's some kind of hideous mixture of all the different planets. So, although it's not European. It could be everything except for European. So it's not really fair to say that it's non-white so much as it is anti-European, going against what existed previously. The new religion of the country, social justice. You know, before you had Christian values, you had the cross, you had Christ, you had all this. Now the new religion is all this stuff. And this is really kind of a poor expression. Social justice, a little bit of a dated term there. But you get the picture. That's the new religion. That's what people are concerned about in this day and age. That's the great heresies. This is the worship in the country. As opposed to a family society, it's an individual society. As opposed to mothers and fathers, you've got consumers, producers, people that go to work. This is the idea that you hear a lot in the 21st century about, this new family. My friends are my family. You guys are like family to me. Or, a single mother and her child, a homosexual couple, a woman and her dog, in various ways, whatever you want to make of that. Just some guy hanging out. That's the family. It's an individual society. It's determined largely by these atomized people just kind of hanging around, mixing and matching in different forms and so on. These are the constituent components of the society, as opposed to English. We are now, oops, I kind of wiped it all away with my pointer. We're now an English and Spanish plus society. So we still obviously predominantly speak English, but it's actually important. In Joe Biden's second video, I thought this was his announcement video. He had the original one, which had all this stuff. America's an idea. It's these ideas. But then he had another video, and the whole thing was in Spanish. And it said, Los Estados Unidos está una idea. I think that's what it says in Spanish. The United States is an idea. The whole thing's in Spanish. You got all these Mexicans speaking Spanish. So, of course, we know the demographic change has the entire Southwest becoming largely Hispanic, the major cities becoming largely Hispanic, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and so on. But there's also a plus. It also leaves room for, it's not simply that it's English and Spanish, but it's just not really simply and exclusively English anymore. So it's English and Spanish plus. Whereas we valued work in America before, now we value activism. A very important thing. I'm not really gung-ho about this boomer stuff about pulling yourselves up by your bootstraps. And when I was your age, I had worked 10 jobs already. Like, it's obviously a different economy these days. It's a different society. But whereas before we valued hard work, that was the American ethic. You go out there, you sweat a little bit, you make your money. That's the American dream. Now the American dream is you kind of like live in Manhattan. And you work for a nonprofit, and on the weekends you're canvassing for some black candidate for whatever, for mayor, and you go to charity events, you go to a charity slam poetry session for LGBTQ rights. That's what's respected now. That is our new component. In an advertisement for Donald Trump, which I think is actually a good foil for this, you'll see vignettes of people in industry working. In an advertisement for Joe Biden or Barack Obama, you see vignettes of activists, of people with their clipboards. And Barack Obama, when he says in his closing address, go out there and do some organizing. That's what's valued. A settler nation versus an immigrant nation. The people that are creating this country are all immigrants. And that's who they show in the videos. Who are we? We are a nation of immigrants. So it's no longer a nation of people that came, they sailed across the Atlantic, they left Europe, and they set up a new country, a shining city on a hill. Now it's a bunch of other people, a bunch of poor people, the pathetic, huddled peasants with measles. They crawled across the border, evaded the law, and then they set up shop, and I don't know, they made a little taqueria, and but they pay their taxes. These are the founding people of the new country. It's the immigrants. Before, it was hierarchical, and that was in many different ways in terms of class, in terms of the governmental structure, in terms of, everything else in society. It was determined by hierarchy. Now it's all about equality. And so this is sort of trite. I mean, we know this stuff, but I think it's important to lay out what our conception of America is. When Joe Biden said America is an idea, that really was driven home to me here about this little distinction here. Because what it is a fundamental division about how we define ourselves as America. What is the country that we live in? Is America a nation or is America an idea? If America is a nation, that means it is a people, that means it is a land, it is a culture. It's very concrete. And when things are concrete, it means they're unchanging. So whether you don't like America or you think America could be better or we're striving to live up to this stuff about all men are created equal, well, all that really doesn't matter because you can't change America. America is my ancestors. America is the people who landed at the Mayflower. It's concrete and it's solid. It is traditional. That is really, I think, the core of a cosmic definition of right-wing and conservative. It is ordered. It is structured. Now, on the other side, you have America as an idea. No, America is not a nation. America is an idea. And so long as the people and the institutions and everything else in America is obeying this idea or this new conception of this malleable idea, it's still America. So even if the country is no longer European, even if the country is no longer Christian, if it's no longer a family society, it doesn't speak English, it worships Martin Luther King, this profligate, degenerate, Marxist scumbag as opposed to George Washington, and it values this goofy activism as opposed to work, and so on and so forth. As long as we obey the idea, as long as these people, in theory, are adhering to this vapid idea, we can still call it America. America in 2050 is 40% white and 60% non-white. It's 14% black and 15% Asian and 20-some% Hispanic. It's still America. America doesn't speak English. It's still America because that's what it is. And I think really what the foil is more about actually is on the right wing. I hear Joe Biden's advertisement, and you want to know the truth, we know all this about the left. People have been saying this more or less about the left in different language, using different people and whatever for a long time. You know, when Barack Obama got into office and talked about fundamentally transforming the country, I think he had a lot of prototypes for this idea many, many years ago. But it really drives home the point about where is the right on this stuff. That's really what it makes me think about. Because I hear Joe Biden, and it's like, okay, the Democratic Party is now completely and totally overtaken by revolutionaries. There is nobody in this race anymore who believes in any of this stuff. They all believe this stuff. And maybe you could say that that was the case in 16. Yeah, more or less, maybe you could say that before, but I really do believe we've sort of entered into a new, we've basically arrived here, and this is our new country, right? But I look at the right when I hear this stuff, and I think, we cannot be calling America an idea on the right if this is who we're up against. We have to be the right if we want to win as the right. We cannot try to be the left if we want to try to win, right, as the right. So, and that may sound redundant, but you hear Donald Trump a lot talking about how America is an idea and a lot of the same kind of stuff, and implicitly he embraces some of these components. Implicitly when he talks about Make America Great Again, perhaps there's connotations to this, and maybe unconsciously think of this stuff, but the only way for us to combat America as an idea, revolutionary America, which these guys have a monopoly on, is for us to embrace America as a nation. And yes, that means the people. Yes, that means, well, America is a white country. Sorry to say. You know, maybe Republicans might say that. Sorry to say. I wouldn't say sorry for that. But America is a nation, and it does have all of this stuff going on. And it cannot be changed by a bunch of intellectuals and politicians. Not if it wants to remain America. Maybe you want to create something totally different, but you can't call it America anymore. So I watched that advertisement, and it really brought home to me, if this is the framing in 16, we're going to lose. If the framing at 16, because Hillary Clinton, I don't think was really, she was sort of implicit about this stuff in the same way that Obama was, more or less. Because Obama still was talking about a lot of this stuff. Hillary Clinton was still kind of trying to appease this stuff. I hear Joe Biden and these other guys, they're all in on this. Every single one of them, all 20 candidates. And I think if the framing that Joe Biden comes out with right out of the gate is Charlottesville. Hillary Clinton's first campaign ad, by comparison, was, you know, you had some guy working in his factory. I'm going to hire some new employees. I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to do this. And then Hillary Clinton, I'm running for president. And we're stronger together. We're going to put America back to work. It didn't really have a lot of content. The framing really wasn't strong. It wasn't the same thing. When you come out of the gate with Charlottesville, America's not a nation. America is not racism and the Lee Monument and all this other stuff. It's all this crap. I have a feeling that they're going to have a big advantage coming out of the gate in 16 because Trump is trying to do the same thing, saying we all bleed the same blood and we are all saluting the same God, and it's sort of like milquetoast revolutionary America. If that's the case, we're going to get our butts kicked for every other reason that I've been saying so far, notwithstanding. You know, if we're just looking at the framing, then this is why he's going to lose. If you look at everything else, you know, maybe it has to do with the wall not being built and so on, but you get the picture. So we've done many similar whiteboards to this before, but this is a point that really has to be driven home. This is a critical juncture in the history of our country. This is a point after which people will say, this was phase 1 of America, this was phase 2. Everything else, Civil War, World War II, all these other events basically pale in comparison to this fundamental juncture where we went from, everything was basically like this, all these other events happening, and then this happened. And then that was America too. Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, they're coming out with America too. And it'll never be the same again. So if you're hearing this, you're like, oh, Nick, you've said a lot of this before. We know all this stuff. We've seen whiteboards comparing these two things. Well, it's important to know. It's very important to get across that we're not going to be living in the same country, and everything's going to change as a result. So I thought it was very fascinating that Joe Biden would come out with an ad like that so explicitly, because his strength is seen typically as his electability. He's seen as somebody who's maybe people are more comfortable with, because he's an old guy, he's a baby boomer, he's white, he represents the older guard of the Democratic Party, a little bit more moderate. He's not one of these people trying to out-woke the other Democrats, and so maybe people see him as more or less trying to adhere to this stuff. But when I see that advertisement, and the first thing is Charlottesville, Virginia, this is where Thomas Jefferson wrote this, but it's also where the Klan rally happened, and yada yada. I'm thinking, okay, we're there. This is the Civil War. This is the distinction now. And so really, this is what it comes down to. And this says a lot about the right. If you believe in all this stuff, hang out with the left. That's when you got to really take a step back and take stock and wonder, am I even right wing? Whose team am I on? I'm about to debate Hunter Avalon, for example. And I've debated a lot of other conservatives like this, who they probably are on board with 60% of this stuff, 60% of what's going on over here. As far as I'm concerned, they're on the side of revolutionary America. If you think the civil rights icons were important, deserving of their own day, and they're heroes, and I'm sorry, you're on this side. If it doesn't matter to you that America is no longer a white country, yeah, you're on this side. You're better off on this side. If you think social justice, even as a concept, in theory is good, or maybe you're anti-Christian or not Christian, maybe you're a pagan, you're on this side. You're on this side. Choose up. If you don't believe in the traditional family, you're like, well, people can do whatever they want. You're on this side. And on and on. So I think we have to finally wake up and, hey, we got to become the real right. We have to become an authentic version of the right wing, because that's the only thing that can combat this crap. You have to explicitly name traditional America. This is a nation. It is a European nation. It is a Christian nation. It's a family society. We speak English. Maybe this is long gone, though, right? I mean, maybe it's already too late, but that's the way I see it. That's the way I see the framing. So that's that. But we are going to move into the numbers here, something a little bit more fresh.